Hi everyone. Wanted to post a short video regarding the recent attacks in Paris and something that concerns me that I've seen spreading around social media lately. Hopefully we can curtail it and offer an explanation for what's going on. I have to first. My disclaimer is that I am not really an adherent of any religion. I think that all religions are kind of kooky. But that having been said, I also think it's not right to single out one religion over another when all religions have their same sort of hang-ups and they're extremists who do weird things and violent things in the name of the religion. So the crux of this video is I've seen a lot of people complaining and criticizing people like President Obama and other leaders for not calling out the terrorists who perpetrated the attacks in Paris on November 13th as Muslim terrorists or as radical Islamic terrorists. Um, that they feel it's really important to identify the religion of the terrorists and not just the acts that they carried out. So I wanted to take a few minutes and explain why that is, and hopefully convince you that it's really not that important. Um, the first issue is that it's completely irrelevant. Um, does it really matter whether the terrorists are Islamic or Christian or atheist or Buddhist or Hindu or any other religion? I mean, at any given time, we have terrorist acts occurring all over the world, and no one religion has a monopoly on it. It's being perpetrated by people of all faiths and even lack thereof, and and I just wonder if identifying these terrorists as Islamic, is that going to make our grief any more or less important? Is that going to impact our resolve on stamping out terrorism to make us pursue the people who carry out these acts more or less vigorously? I would certainly hope not, because the fact is that the religion they purport to follow is not as important to me as the fact that they're killing people. And that's what we need to be focusing on, not the religion, but the acts. Um, and that brings me to my second point, which is that I know a lot of people out there are sitting. There's this popular belief that Islamic is an inherently violent religion. That for some reason they believe that people are more apt to commit violent acts if they follow the Islamic faith versus another faith such as Christianity or no faith at all, and that's simply not true. And I wanna stick a pin in that right now because uh, I know that there are violent passages in the Quran. I've seen them, I've read them. There's also peaceful passages in the Quran. The Quran says stuff like there's no compulsion where religion is concerned. There are passages that say stuff like the taking of one innocent life is like taking all of mankind. So religion to me, like I said, all religions are kind of kooky. But one thing I've noticed about religions is that different people get different messages from them, and violent messages are not taken just from Islam. I mean, you look at the Christian Bible, and it's full of violence. It's full of horrific acts. Um, you look at things like God destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, or God destroying the entire human race except for Noah and his family, just because they didn't believe in God or they didn't follow Him like He wanted them to. Um, we've had man acting in God's name, committing horrific acts. For example, the attacks on Muslim civilization during the Crusades. Even more recently, the KKK was a Christian organization, um, and committed heinous acts of violence and terrorism against African Americans. Um, Even more recently, you have things like the Centennial Olympic Park bombing and the Birmingham abortion clinic bombing. I actually lived in Birmingham, Alabama when that happened back in 1998 and remember it very well. You have things like the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church shooting that happened in 2008. You had a suicide attack by a Christian terrorist on an IRS building in Austin, Texas in 2010. Killed an IRS agent. Um, so, please stop pretending like, people killing people in God's name, in the Christian God's name, is a thing of the distant past. Even in places like Uganda, they just recently, in 2014, passed an anti homosexuality act. The original provisions of that act contained the death penalty for being gay. And since that act passed in 2014, there's been a tenfold increase in attacks on LGBT people in Uganda. And it's important to realize that American pastors actually traveled to Uganda to consult with them on the law and pass it. So, you know, the, I find it extremely hypocritical to pick out Islam as an inherently violent religion. It's just not true. Religion, you get from it what you put into it, and people who are violent people will commit heinous acts, regardless of their religion or lack thereof. I also have to point out there are 1.57 billion Muslims in this world. How many people have committed these heinous acts? A couple of hundred have radicalized to the point of shooting up cities or bombing things. There's certainly only a couple of dozen or a few dozen thousand people who are involved in organizations like ISIS or Al Qaeda. So, the math just doesn't add up. 1.57 billion people. If Islam were inherently violent, we'd have far more attacks than we have right now. So, please keep that in mind. I've seen people who say that, well, Muslims secretly condone these acts of terrorism, that they actually cheer them on. That's simply not true. And if you see people spreading these lies, please stop them, because they're extraordinarily dangerous. And I'll explain why in a second. But the entire Muslim world has condemned these attacks in Paris. You look at the leaders, for example, of Qatar, Indonesia, Kuwait, Turkey. Even Iranian President Rouhani put out a statement condemning these attacks. These are, highly, highly Islamic countries. The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is frequently accused in the United States of being a sympathizer for terrorism, falsely accused, I should point out, put out a statement. And I want to read it to you because it's important to me that you understand how the Muslim community views these terrorists. Their statement says, "These savage and despicable attacks on civilians, whether they occur in Paris, Beirut, or any other city, are outrageous and without justification. We condemn these horrific crimes in the strongest terms possible. Our thoughts and prayers are with the loved ones of those killed and injured, and with all of France. The perpetrators of these heinous attacks must be apprehended and brought to justice." So, yeah, if you see people spreading the lie that the Muslim community somehow implicitly or even explicitly condones these acts of terrorism, please set them straight, because it's not true. If you don't believe me, there are Twitter hashtags going around right now of Muslim people condemning the attacks. Hashtags like "terrorism has no religion" and "not in my name." Feel free to look those up and see for yourself. So, and that brings me to my third point, which is why it's important to not paint people as terrorists who are not terrorists. And that is that there is a contingent of people in the United States who are looking to harm or take the civil liberties and freedoms away from the Muslim community, and that's just not right. As an example, on August the 5th, 2012, a Christian terrorist went to a Sikh temple in Wisconsin and killed a bunch of people under the mistaken belief that because they were wearing turbans that they must be Middle Eastern and therefore Islam. And even people who aren't that extreme, you'll probably remember the quote-unquote Ground Zero Mosque issue up in New York City. And just to clarify, that was not a mosque. It was actually a community center to promote interfaith dialogue that the Muslim community wanted to build. And they were stopped because of all the outrage that happened. There were actually politicians threatening to pass zoning laws to make it actually illegal to build the community center there. And I have to point out again, this is the Muslim community trying to build a community center on their own private land, and yet we had politicians threatening to take away their right to do so. So I just want to point that out, that one of the reasons that people are insisting that we label these terrorists as Islamic or radical Muslims is because the next step from there is to start taking steps against the religion itself, and people who have absolutely nothing to do with terrorism, who just want to live their lives peacefully and get along with everybody. So again, if you see this kind of poison spreading through social media, please don't repost it, don't spread it around, and if you're feeling up to a good argument, point out that it's just not true that the Muslim people are generally speaking, like every individual. You can't tell a given person. I know plenty of atheists and Christians and other religions, individuals who I don't care for, but at the same time, generally speaking, they're very kind-hearted people, and they're just like everybody else. So anyway, thanks for listening, and take care. If you have any comments or questions, just post them to the video, and I'll try to answer as best as I can, given that I'm not actually a world leader or anything. But anyway, thanks again for listening, and take care, and have a good night.